Hello, my name's AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I wanted to bring you today a video. This is a brand new video on a new game. This is recently in Zurich, Switzerland. A giant tournament was held with some of the very best players in the world. Carlsen was there, Anand was there, Caruana, Nakamura, and several others, and really just some of the best players in the world. Gelfand was there. And Carlsen won the tournament. However, Fabiano Caruana, who in my opinion is one of the most rapidly developing players in the whole world, he's still very young. I don't know exactly how old he is, 19 or 20, but anyway, he won the rapid section of the tournament. He got 4 out of 5 in the rapids and beat several of the players, including Carlsen. And he won the rapid going away. He didn't win the tournament because he didn't do too well in the classical part of the tournament. But the his performance in the rapid tournament was extremely impressive. And I just wanted to make a video really quickly on his win over Carlsen. And we're going to go ahead and just jump into that without any delay. It starts out knight f3. And, main reason that I wanted to annotate this game was that, Carlsen loses, and it wasn't real clear from playing over the game. I played through the game several times without a chess computer, just replaying it on the board, on the screen, on chess.com, and also I downloaded the thing and studied it in ChessBase for a while without an engine. And without an engine, it was not that easy to determine, where the mistakes were. I mean, some moves were, obviously bad, but I mean, others were not so obvious, and so I decided to fire up an engine and see if I couldn't quickly determine, what the good moves and the bad moves were there in this game. Anyway, it starts off one knight f3. That's like a radio opening or a King's Indian attack. Knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2, c6, white castles, bishop f5. This is a standard, kind of like a Lasker anti-Indian type of setup here for that white normally adopts, but black is adopting it. So he's basically down a move. White's basically playing the King's Indian with an extra move, like playing it with black but with a move in hand. d3, e6, and Caruana so far has just been playing solid chess. I think he had several reasons that he wanted to play this way. Number one, I think he knows this opening very well. He's played it before and he studied it, and he wanted moves he could play quickly and get Carlsen away from his opening preparation. Now Caruana strikes quickly at the center. c4, knight bd7, c takes d5, exclam. That's a very good move. It basically fixes the pawn structure. No matter how black takes, he winds up with an inferior game. I would have taken with the king pawn here, but for whatever reason, I think according to the engine, both captures are approximately equal, but Carlsen captures with the c pawn here, which leaves him with slightly better game, just a tiny advantage, and just a little bit more space. Bishop e3. Now the engines are all indicating moves like knight c3 or a3 and b4. I did an overnight deep positional analysis with this, with a deep shredder, and it seemed to like the plan for white for a3 and b4 for whatever reason. Black can't respond. In other words, a3 here, and if black responds with a5, knight c3, and black has a permanent problem with the b5 square. So that was one idea. Another idea is Fritz 13, just like simply knight c3. Caruana goes his own way. He plays a simple move, bishop b3. Carlsen immediately neutralizes the bishop with bishop c5. 9, bishop takes c5, knight takes c5. Now knight c3, castles, queen d2, h6. I would say that this position is a very, very small edge for black. But it's very, very tiny. Just because black has a pawn on the 4th rank and maybe has a fuzz more space than white. Although white's position, although really is extremely solid, and he has obviously no weaknesses. Rfc1, rook c8, b4. You knew that move was coming sooner or later. And if black tried to play a5 to stop this move, then again that weakens the b6 square. The knight could go there later, and it also weakens the b5 square. So anyway, b4, kicking the knight. Knight bd2, a4, queen e7. Now b4 is hanging. Knight b5. So now the queen on d7 is guarding b4. a6, knight bd4, bishop g6, just a nice little safe move, knight b3, and now e5. And now, because black dominates the center, I would say, and he clearly has more space, I would say that black has a solid edge. It's not that much. It looks nice, but it's hard to convert it into something concrete. And I think that's the problem that's always presented, a player when you have an advantage. How you turn your advantage, like 0.35 or 0.227 or whatever. How do you determine, how much of an edge you have, and how do you turn that into something more solid, something more substantial, something more real, something you can actually win a chess game with it? And that's Carlsen's problem here. Now white plays knight h4. Of course, he's threatening to double white's knight pawns and take on g6. So the bishop retreats to h7. In other words, black didn't want to have to take with his f pawn here and get doubled g pawns. That would just be kind of ugly there. Bishop h3, d4. Black basically just decides to gain a little space. Knight back to f3. I thought that maybe, when I first went over this game, that white should play either bishop f5 or knight f5, but neither move is that impressive. The queen can always move to another square. But the big thing is, that, black doesn't even really have to take there. But anyway, white just moves backwards. Knight f3. Rook takes c1, rook takes c1. Knight b6. Now black's attacking the a4 pawn, so the pawn moves up. a5, knight bd5. Rook c5, rook d8. Again, black has a nice edge here. It's a solid edge for black, but it's nothing you can really, it's not something you can actually win a chess game with. It varies from engine to engine. I did it with Houdini, Ripka, Deep Shredder, and Fritz 13. And each engine gives a slightly different evaluation. Also depends on how much time and how much RAM you give to the hash tables, etc. But each engine will give a plus for black. But even the biggest plus I think I saw was like half a pawn, and you can't even win a chess game with even half a pawn. You need a full pawn. So black has a nice edge, but again, the problem is that white has no real weaknesses, and how does black make something real out of that? Now white plays basically a slightly doubtful move. He plays knight a1 here. All the engines seem to like simple moves like bishop g2 or king f1 or king g2 or a bishop g2 or something like that. Caruana plays his knight in the corner. The idea is later he's going to play the knight to c2 to give his pawn on b4 a little extra protection. It's never a good idea to put your knight in a corner. I don't care what anyone says. It's just a bad move, and all the engines show an increase in black's advantage after white plays knight a1. But here's something you got to understand. There's a big difference between a inferior position and a clearly lost one. And Caruana is a very strong grandmaster, and he clearly understands that. I also have watched a few of the videos and online. There's several YouTube videos of Caruana's games online. In fact, many of them. And if you go to the official website, the Zurich website, there's several videos there as well. But anyway, if you watch Caruana, especially in the rapid, he was playing very fast. In fact, probably the one problem he seems to have, at least in the classical, at least in this tournament, was he was playing maybe so fast, or he wasn't finding the deep moves that you need to find in slow chess. But in rapid chess, he just he can throw a bunch of moves out there really quickly. And I think that's where a lot of the other players just have problems dealing with Caruana's speed. I mean, he sees the board very clearly, and he can throw some moves out there very quickly. And he also has a very good understanding of positional chess, and he knows like the difference between the various degrees of advantage. In other words, he knows when he's clearly busted or just slightly inferior or greatly inferior, etc. And Caruana very clearly understands all of that. So the big thing is Carlsen, is you get an advantage, but you've got very short. This was a rapid game, and I'm not sure if it was like pure straight up game in 25 or game in 15 with a 10-second time delay or increment per move or whatever. But it was rapid chess, and in rapid chess you don't have a lot of time. I mean, obviously that's the big factor in rapid chess, is you don't have a lot of time. And I think the problem with that all the other players seem to have with Caruana was they just couldn't handle his combination of speed and good moves. And not too many people could match his speed without making a mistake. And if you don't believe me, witness Carlsen's smash of Gelfand with the Binko Gambit. I mean, white blunders in just like 11 moves in the rapid. That was in the Zurich Rapid tournament. But anyway, so you know, Caruana plays his knight in the corner, knight A1. Again, he's understanding, you know, yeah, I'm sure he knows it's maybe a slightly inferior move, but he also knows that his position is very solid and it's probably not going to be very easy. In fact, almost nearly impossible. It's time limit to find a good way to exploit that move. Now here's where Carlsen blunders. If I were black, I would have just played something very simple quickly, is like king f8 or bishop g6. In other words, the bishop on h7 right now, if a rook penetrates to the last row and all the other pieces get traded off, then black's in a mating web. So bishop g6 to put the bishop on a slightly better square, give the king luft, or even king f8. One of those two moves, or even bishop g6 now and king f8 on the next move, because we all know that the end game's coming, and in the end game the king belongs near the center. In fact, I believe there are 4 basic principles, you know, that you look for in a middle game. It's you look for attacking moves, then you're looking for play, just basically greatly, you know, increasing the scope of your pieces. Then it's, you know, you're looking for things like making weaknesses, double pawns, fixing them, attacking them, and then you're looking for, you know, if you can't do any of those things, then you're looking for a transition to an end game. Maybe you have a good knight versus a bad bishop, something of that nature. So those are the 4 basic principles of the middle game. Using those principles to guide you, that helps you choose your base. Kotov said you should always, in any position, choose 3 candidate moves. So, you know, if trying to find a candidate move. But in rapid chess, sometimes you can't really go through all that process. You really need to just find a good move quickly. So if I were black, I would play like bishop g6 now and maybe king f8 on the very next move, because those are 2 solid moves. It just makes your position better, and I can't see any way of it making your position worse. Another thing that black might consider doing is that his king pawn sometimes in some lines, you know, it'll be hanging this knight if the queen moves away. So another thing you could do is play bishop g6, maybe put the king on f8, and then maybe later play knight e8, c7, and then put the pawn on f6. So this pawn's always guarding. This pawn is always guarded by another pawn. That's just one idea. I mean, there's a variety of ideas there, but just some ideas that black could rearrange his pieces. But certainly there's couple of very easy moves, bishop g6, king f8, that black could have made in this position. I think here Carlsen tried to force things, and you know, I think that might have been, you know, I'm not even sure, but I think Caruana may have purposely played a move like knight a1, maybe like waving, you know, a flag in Carlsen's face. In other words, saying, okay, you got to find the refutation of this move. A, it's going to chew up time on your clock, and B, you know, you might make a tactical error, and that's what happens here. Carlsen plays e4. I think he was trying to refute Caruana's bad move, but it basically boomerangs on him. Knight takes d4, e takes d3, e takes d3. Now black plays another bad move. Fritz says just simply rook e8 here, and it looks like black's actually got a good game because white's position is fairly disorganized. Even though he's a pawn, you know, black's a pawn down, he's got a lot of play. His pieces are on excellent squares. But anyway, here Carlsen plays bishop takes d3. Again, Fritz 13 and Deep Shredder, you know, both prefer rook e8 there. But anyway, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. Now knight takes b4, hitting the queen. Queen c3, that's forced. The queen's got to go to a square that's going to cover everything here. And now comes a shocking move here. It's, let's see, could you have played? I guess you might have played queen c4 there too. But for whatever reason, he went queen c3. And now knight e4, and that forks the queen and the rook. And this is, I think, what Carlsen had been counting on. I'm almost sure that, you know, these moves, saw the video of the game, and these moves were played fairly quickly. And Carlsen apparently, you know, just missed an in-between move. I'm pretty sure that the next move is what Carlsen must have overlooked. He was expecting white to just move his queen, and then knight takes rook or queen takes rook or whatever. And it's a fairly good game for a black. Black's got at least a draw. He'll have a rook and a pawn for 2 minor pieces in a position where 2 minor pieces are not coordinating well at all and don't have any stable outposts. And those are the keys when you have minor pieces. But anyway, now Caruana comes up with a surprise move. He plays knight f5 exclam. That's a in-between move, and I'm pretty sure, relatively confident, that this is what Magnus Carlsen must have overlooked. But anyway, knight f5. Now he can't go into an exchange down because he'll just wind up a piece down. And I have a web page. I'm making a web page on this game, and I'll post a link to that. All the engines agreed. Carlsen played queen f8, and all the engines agreed that that was box or forced or the only move. Now queen takes b4, and now knight takes c5, and now knight c2. And now white has two minor pieces for a rook, but it's a long way from being, for a rook and a pawn, I guess, but it's a long way from being a clear win, because black's got his b7, his one weakness, guarded, and it's not easy for white to make inroads because of the simplified situation of the pawn structure. So right now the rook and pawn is pretty much holding its own against the two minor pieces. Clearly, the two minor pieces will always be theoretically favored, but again, the difference between theory and practice of actually making something happen. Knight d3, queen c3, g6, kicking that knight on f5. Knight goes knight fd4, 33 knight back to c5, bishop g2, queen d6. The queen and the rook are now working together on a battery on the d file. h4, that's a good move, gives the white king a square in case, the rook and queen penetrate to the back rank. h5. One other idea too is white might play h4, h5 and corrupt black's position. Pawn takes pawn makes a huge problem with the white's king safety with that many pieces on the board. With a queen, two knights, and a bishop, black has to always be concerned about king safety. But anyway, h5, that's to stop the white's rook pawn from advancing up the board. Queen e3, just moving around. But both players are basically just dancing around here, jockeying for position, trying to improve their position without creating any more weaknesses. Queen f6, knight f3, queen f5, knight fd4, queen back to f6, king h2, and now king g7. This was a very bad move here. I think if queen back to d6, then basically the computers don't show that white's made any progress at all over the last 8 to 10 moves. So, but now Carlsen, again short of time, he plays king g7. Kind of an unbelievable move for a player of Carlsen's ability, but then again, I've seen Kasparov drop his queen one time when he only had 3 seconds to make a move in a chess game. So anybody can, I guess, can make a mistake, especially when you don't have any time left on the clock. But king g7 is right away. I was suspecting this to be a bad or inferior move when I first saw this game, even before I used an engine to analyze it. And I said, the king's got to be a target. It's putting the king on the long diagonal, and knights around. Anytime you have that many pieces, knights, minor pieces, and especially knights and queen combining. So queen c3 exclam. And now the black queen, if it ever leaves the diagonal, is going to get hammered by knight f5 check. Knight d7, f4, b5. Now, when I first saw this game, I thought b5 was like a blunder or another mistake, but it turns out that black is almost virtually in Zugzwang here, or some people say Zugzwang, but black's almost without a decent move here, and he's literally forced to to play this move. In fact, many of the engines choose b5 here. And now knight b4. And now here, if black would have played king g8, white is still winning. I mean, white's got a number of ways he can win here, and I didn't even bother to analyze it out to a win because it's just a rapid game, number one, and number two, Carlsen literally plays two virtual blunders. I mean, for us they wouldn't be necessarily blunders, but for the world champion, they're definitely blunders for a player of his caliber. Black plays two bad moves back to back, and the game gets over very quickly. Knight b8, double question mark. Knight d5 that hits the queen, and now b4. That's another bad move. Just about everything's losing here, but now Caruana finds the very sharp shot. Knight f5 check, exclam 44, and black resigns. Black's losing his queen. He's going to drop a whole queen here. In fact, he could drop his queen and the rook and then the knight, all in short order. All would check too. So here Carlsen, resigns. He does a graceful thing and resigns. Black is losing the queen. It's an easily won game. It's a very nice win by Fabiano Caruana. Again, I think Caruana is, over the last 5 to 7 years, 5 to 8 years, is easily one of the most improved players in the world. He's had one of the most rapid rise in ratings over that period, and he's now easily in the top 10 in the world. And he also is literally one of the best rapid players in the world. I heard several people say that in rapid chess he just doesn't have any peer, and he certainly showed that in Zurich. I mean, he was clearly, you know, with the world's best players there, he was in a class literally all by himself. He got 4 out of 5, and you know, was never in any trouble and any real trouble, and never dropped a single game. And while everyone else was, you know, dropping lots of games. So and with a better result in the Blitz, and even a halfway decent result in the classical tournament, then Caruana could have won the tournament. But anyway, he winds up losing. You know, to Carlsen takes clear first, because the way the tournament was arranged, the classical chess, the slower chess, was much more important, or rated more highly. I think it was double points as compared to the rapid chess. But anyway, that's pretty much concludes my video. I hope you enjoyed my video. I will have a web page on this game. It'll be up today, and as soon as I post this video on YouTube, then I'll also post the link to my web page as well. And I hope if you like my videos, you will consider supporting my both my web page and my video making efforts, and you will make a contribution. The way you do that is go to the PayPal website. That's www.paypal.com, and make a contribution under my email account, which is LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. And anyway, that pretty much concludes my video. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. And also email me, LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. If you have any comments, you know, I'd love to get feedback. I love to hear comments, good or bad, you know, any feedback whatsoever. And certainly I'm always looking for any way that I can make my videos better and make my web pages better. Thank you for watching my video, and have a great day.